Hi, good morning. Welcome to HeKate's Crossing. Good afternoon, whatever time it is for you. Anyway, so what I want to talk about is beginning your tarot journey. Okay, there are so many amazing decks out there. I want to talk about what I began my tarot journey with. And I know I've most probably discussed this a million times on my channel, but I just want to go into it a little deeper. I want to show you maybe a little bit more about how I sort of used these decks together. This is what I really began my tarot journey with. My first couple of decks, a tarot and an oracle. Before I expanded into other oracle decks, other tarot decks, the very first couple of years of working with tarot, I really began the journey with the Native American tarot. Okay, so I began this journey. And what I did was I began my journey by really getting to know the cards. Now, we know this isn't actually my very first deck. Cardstock is different. The size is slightly different as well. The original deck was slightly larger. I feel was slightly larger. It was more papery. This is a bit more plasticky feeling. This is US Games, of course, but it was more papery than this. Of course, the companion book came in the complete set. Now I've struggled to actually find this book, but managed to get it on Amazon in the marketplace actually. Anyway, so, and quite inexpensive. But what I want to do was really talk about how I sort of began the journey of working with tarot. Now what happened was I was interested in tarot, but I didn't know quite where to look. So a few friends that I knew that were using tarot showed me some of the decks. I wasn't interested in the Rider-Waite-Smith. I sort of looked at a Celtic tarot deck that didn't really interest me in a way. Like, I sort of looked at it and it looked quite complicated because the pip, because they were pip, it was a pip deck. So anyway, I picked up the Native American tarot, and as soon as I laid it out, like straight away, looked at the cards and just went 1, 2, 3, and oh my god, just straight away you could see that this was to do with death in some way. It seemed to be a resurrection of oneself. You could sort of see what the card was trying to tell you straight away. The moon, you could see, was about the moon phases, the cycles. There was a sense of the wolf here, so maybe in the dog, so there was that sense of being two sides of the same coin, so to speak. I just felt like the cards were sort of speaking volumes. Here we've got 3 of Shields that talked about the craftsman, so you know it was about your skills or abilities in your journey. And I just felt that when a client, when I was asking a question, the cards really did speak volumes. Here you've got the Chief of Blades, and straight away I got that sense of sort of being one in authority, one in charge of the situation, taking control of what was actually going on mentally within one's own journey. So I really felt these cards were speaking to me. So my friend quickly grabbed her own deck and said, go buy your own, because she said, you're not taking it with you. So I brought my own deck, of course, and that was over 20 years ago. And I've continued to use this deck in many ways. So what I started to do was, when I finally got my own set, was actually take one card at a time and create a journal, which unfortunately has disappeared out of storage, and so I don't have that anymore. But I really felt this was a deck that gave me so much, and it is the only deck I used for clients. I used it for myself. It was the only deck I had at the time. So I used this for a number of years, for a couple of years, without getting any other deck. I felt it was the only deck that I sort of needed. I wanted to explore it. The book gives you so much information about each card that I really felt this was all I needed to do readings. It gave me fantastic readings on a wide variety of topics. It gave me anything from really quick messages to quite in-depth messages, depending on what came up, how many cards I used, what the context of the question was, what the client actually wanted. So I felt it was a very flexible deck for me in that way. You might find this deck unappealing. You might find that you work with something else completely different. Now this was before I knew really anything in depth about tarot systems. I didn't really know much about Tarot de Marseille, knew very little about Rider-Waite-Smith or Thoth. So really this was the deck that I used. And what I found I was doing as I went through this book, and I looked at the spreads, so I really felt the Kachina knife spread was one that I used quite a lot, with cards 1 and 2 being the hilt, and then moving through the blade you've got the past, present and future. And this was a really good basic spread that I would use if someone wanted a fairly quick reading. And then when I wanted something a bit more in depth, I found I was using, where is the seasonal? Not the native price. The seasonal spread here, which starts with 1, 2, 3 in the center, and then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 for winter, 9, 10, 11, 12 and 13 for spring, winter, spring, summer, and then fall. And it turns out to be like 23 card spread, but I felt this was a really good, spread to use for clients who wanted sort of a half hour to an hour reading. I could go through it quite quickly, or I could go through it quite in depth depending on what the client needed. So this was the spread that I used most of the time. So like 3 in the center, then you start on the outside, moving through 2 in the center, so 3 then 2, 3 then 2, 3 then 2, then 3 then 2. So doing that was, and I've shown that on my spread on my channel, may have some variations to it, but that's basically it. Was the medicine wheel 23 card spread, and I used that quite a lot for a variation of that, whether I went into depth with it or not, depended on the time, the client, the question, the surrounding cards, etc., etc. So that was what I basically used, and I used this a lot in actually when some of the psychic fairs and things, when the clients wanted something a bit more in depth. So it went between going through the Kachina knife spread and this one here, or that was sort of the extremes. I mean, there were other spreads in between, but that was basically what I used. And this was really good for when I went to, because I was doing a lot of readings in people's houses as well. And so this was a really good one to sort of to do for clients, especially when it was their first reading, they wanted something a bit more in depth to start with. This was a really, really good one. I used in a lot of readings. So yeah, between the Kachina knife and the medicine wheel 23 card spread, they were the two that I sort of used a lot to start with. There were other spreads as well, like the Native Cross, the Aztec Pyramid I used quite a bit as well. I didn't really use the Shining Star. The Horns card, 6 card spread was quite popular as well that I did. I felt like that was a really quick spread that could be used. So anyway, there was other aspects to this as well, through visualizations and meditations. So I felt like this was a really good deck for me to explore. So I think that's what's really important when you choose your first deck, whatever deck, tarot deck that is. This was what was for me. It is really important that you spend some quality time with the one deck. Just spend some quality time with it, and that way you really get to understand it, know it, learn it. For me, this was so much more than just tarot, of course. It was really about diving into the teachings of the Native American. Now, like, even though I'm in New Zealand, I really felt like this was something that was very sacred to me, very special, and I had no idea why. Okay, it was a real personal journey for me. So I thought that was really cool. Now, what I got next to add to my collection was the Crystal Alley cards. Now I got the first deck. This is the Evolution edition. The first deck I got was with the purple backs, with the single crystal in the middle. Very similar to this, except it was plain purple, as you might have seen in my formative deck years. Now this deck for me, after doing that real large spread for clients, I would choose just one card. Okay, the client would choose, or I'd choose just one card for the client, and then I'd go through and what the client loved was they actually got quite a lot out of it, because I actually typed up my readings as well. When I was doing the readings for the client, I would actually, as I was sort of speaking to them to start with, I would also type up a lot of the information what I was getting through. But I'd also share, I had this already on, I had a lot of these cards already on disc with some of the meanings from the books, not all, the whole thing, just sort of the message, the chakra stuff, the affirmation, the element, of course, as well. So I'd type up some of this information, or I had it already saved, and all I had to do was print it out for them. And they were just like so rapt, they had that information that they could do. So I found this really good when I'm just doing one card spreads with it. So that was really cool. Now the other thing I actually got from the website before I got the Crystal Alley card, Evolution Edition. Now from the website I actually got the Gifts and Lessons card. Now this was a 10 card spread that looked at, the 4 elements, but it looked at gifts and lessons. So what you'd do is you'd look at the gifts. That's interesting. So you're looking at gifts and lessons of each element. And then the self. Sorry, I've just really run out of room very quickly on this table. And so this was another spread that I actually did. Now you can use this with anything. So it's gifts and elements, gifts and lessons of each thing, whether it's physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental, of course. So it's basically, I mean, you can do this any way you like. Set your intention for each position. So you've got the gift of something and the lesson. So the gift may have been your will, your determination, maybe being able to achieve what you desire through your own will, and it may come with a sense of emotion. What's going on there? Yeah. So I felt that was a great spread. You could go into it a lot more. I've been into it. I just wanted to really show you briefly about how I chose to work with these cards. Now remembering I only have these two decks to work with. These were the only two decks that I worked with, and I really felt it was really beneficial to my journey, was to only work with these two decks for the months, for the year actually, years after such a long time, only working with these two decks. So working through understanding the Native American Tarot, working and understanding the Crystal Alley cards. So that's what I did to begin with. So that's, I think, the best way to start your journey, is really get to know the tarot and an oracle absolutely to begin with. If you're working with tarot, start working with the tarot, working with an oracle deck, and just really dive deep. Don't try and clutter your mind with lots of different decks. Focus on one and get that. And this is what I still do today. Even though my collection has grown, I have been reading tarot for over 20 years. So what I do is I really get a deck, as you may have seen with the Primordial Tarot study. I've really chosen a deck and chosen to work with it for a month or so, and just really get to know it and just take my time. Even though my collection has grown and maybe there are decks there that I haven't quite yet explored, that's okay. I just put them to one side, and when I'm ready I will explore them. Not panicking about it, not stressing about it, just enjoying the journey of the deck that I'm exploring and really getting to know, and not worrying too much about it, not setting any rules or regulations, just being really flexible with the study as well. Not being like, I must do this at this time or I must do that at that time. Just being really flexible with it. If something feels a little bit difficult, maybe working through that difficulty. Just enjoying the journey, not making it a chore, is so important when starting out. So I wanted to share my first starting out deck and what I did. Not stressing about all these beautiful decks that were out there. I mean, I've looked online and seen that there were lots and lots. And remember, this was just starting out in the late 1990s, just before 2000. And so there was that exploration of not being a lot of decks in town. There were not a lot of decks in the store. So when I was first starting out, and so really sort of just allowing myself to being in that moment. So that's really what I want to share with you today, was when you're starting out, choose one tarot deck that actually speaks volume to you, no matter what it is, no matter what that deck is. Just take one tarot deck and one oracle deck and use them either separately or you can use them together, of course. I mean, I did some fantastic readings just learning the decks by combining them in a reading. I might do this. I felt was really good as well, worked really well, was to take 3 cards here. Okay, so we're looking at Maiden of Shields, and to me this is a very gentle card, very healing, and so I then felt there was a sense of forgiveness needed, maybe not being so harsh with oneself. Here we had the Warrior of Pipes, and this to me was very much about hesitation. Maybe something feels as though something is broken at this time. I mean, when you look at the imagery, the cards do speak volumes. So let's have a look and see what Crystal card responds to that. So we had this sense of prayer. So maybe there was a sense of being in quiet, being silent. Prayer can also talk about, believing in the, in what you actually desire, what you actually need at this time, can be part of this process as well. So maybe we've got this hesitation, so we're needing to use a time of silence to be able to move forward. Now here we have transformation, okay, Death card. Okay, to me it's about changes, transformation, being in the darkness, being in silence again, allowing ourselves to move ahead. So what crystal could work with us at this time? So crystal, I got carnelian. So it's about the action needing to be taken. So what an interesting reading when you look at the tarot card and the oracle card. The messages really do speak loudly. So this is a really great way to combine your tarot and oracle card in a practice. Whatever deck that is for you. For me, it was the Native American Tarot and the Crystal Alley cards. Of course, the original versions, not these versions, was definitely a deck from the earlier printing, and of course the original Crystal Alley cards, not the Evolution pack, but it does the same thing, of course. So I love the way that you can combine these cards in a spread to get more of an information. In that lessons, gifts and lessons card, you could do that with this. You could go, okay, so I want to look at all the gifts in this spread. So you're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. These are the gifts, and then you go, well, I actually want to look at what lessons do I actually have to learn as I move through those. Wow. So really interesting when you start to look at this. Wow, so interesting. Okay, so for an example of this, the sense of the lessons I need to learn is all about finding clarity in the situation. And it was because about the gift was about being able to stand up for myself. I feel that was what that chief of blades. I felt like there was a sense of clarity in the situation. You've got blades as well, which is about the mind. So really interesting. So here you've got the sense of path of service. So it's about understanding one's own path of service, and the gift of that is clarity. Wow, so isn't it amazing how that sort of ties in really well? So here you've got the sense of insight coming through as well. So you had the gift of insight, and it came from that whole sense, or that, sorry, that lesson of insight, that lesson of understanding, and it came from choices being made as well. I felt like there was that sense of choices. Got two of pipes here. So I felt like there was choices. There was a sense of looking ahead and seeing what was of value to the journey. And here you've got the sense of skills and abilities coming through. So I felt like you achieved that by learning about moving ahead. You know, your whole lesson was about coming through with understanding, transcendence. Wow, isn't it amazing how they're sort of connecting here? And here you've got this this lesson of wisdom. Okay, so from understanding, and what it does is allows you to understand the connection of the thread. This whole, the star card here is very much about when your thread breaks and how it can be reconnected here. But it can also be about your dreams and your goals, your psychic abilities. That's all those things that are coming through for you. I love the way the cards connected in a spread in this way. So this is gifts and lessons that you could use to really find a way to work with your tarot and oracle deck in a new and fresh way. So yeah, that was what I chose to do, working with one tarot deck and one oracle deck as I began my journey. And you can continue to do that now without being too complicated with all the amazing decks out there. Choose one deck. Don't make it you must do this, you must do that, but make it flexible, make your practice flexible and enjoyable. So that's it from me. Don't forget to check the links below, check the links on my channel, like, subscribe and ring that bell so you know when the next video will be uploaded. Take care.